All right, Mr. H here, and today I'm going to be talking about rules, procedures, and time management. So these are key takeaways from week 2 of Purdue University's Special Education Master's Course, EDPS 51500. So I guess we should start with the sort of the difference between rules and procedures. And basically, these are going to be rules are telling students how they should behave, right? So, rules are going to be clear and concise. They're going to have consequences associated with breaking them, right? So, they're going to be defining sort of those negative behaviors and the consequences that come with. Whereas procedures are telling them how things are done, right? So, these are sort of the processes by which the classroom runs. So some things with rules, you definitely want rules to be concise, specific. You don't need a rule for every occasion. You kind of want them to be broad and blanketing, so they can be applied, but you don't want too many, right? A good rule of thumb, I try to keep classroom rules to around 10. And I let the students have a certain degree of agency in how these rules are created. So working together collaboratively to make the rules gives students a high degree of buy-in. It also makes them more easy to enforce. Having 10 allows for nonverbal communication. You can use your fingers to relay rules, or you can use numbers when in like a large group setting or something where you don't necessarily need to sit down and break them down. So just having clear, concise rules, and the consequences for those rules need to be codified as well. They need to be static. So you don't want your consequences to be on a sliding scale, creating a lot of vagueness between how a rule is enforced and when it's enforced and what the consequence is going to be. Both the enforcement and the consequences need to be a constant thing. This will build respect as consistency is upheld. With the procedures, sort of the same thing. Those can be more in depth because that's going to determine the flow and the modality of your classroom. So you want those to be very specific while still keeping them concise and in student-centered language. But just thinking anything that's going to be done repetitively, or even if it's an assignment for the day, just having those procedures, reviewing them constantly, and keeping those consistent as well is very important. Time management. So time management is very elusive when it comes to education. You sort of have to prioritize how you want your day to flow. So there's differences between gen ed and special education. Obviously, in special education, we have certain things that have required minutes, so those we're legally bound to. So obviously, they need to be prioritized higher. You can't necessarily shrug those off in a day. But other things throughout your day, they do get assigned a lower priority. So I make a schedule for the day, and though we do try to stick to it, if we don't get to everything, that's okay. We can always come back tomorrow. So the way I kind of go about time management is I always start off with a curriculum plan. This is spread out throughout the school year. I always leave 3 weeks at the end. So those kind of give me that flow to where if we miss something in a day or maybe 2 days in a row, it's okay. We have 3 entire weeks built in where I don't have academics pre-planned. That kind of gives me that overflow time. Next, we go down to lesson scheduling. So within the curriculum plan, here's where I'm taking those weeks and I'm actually assigning lessons to each one. There, we're kind of going into the number of days to teach the skill, utilize the skill and reach mastery, and then introducing it alongside other skills. So that's kind of the integration and assessment, right? Then we come down to, like I was saying earlier, that daily schedule where we are ranking in priority all the tasks within the lesson, all the skills, those required minutes and things like that. Then you come down to individual time management. So this is like within the students where we're making sure they're able to complete academic tasks. We're looking at using timers for whole class to monitor transition, using individual timers to help with students that may have a low completion rate, things like that. So various forms of overlapping time management are key within the classroom. And Yeah, that's kind of it. I guess just to kind of reiterate, like I said, kind of codifying those rules, codifying your procedures, staying consistent with them, staying concise, um, and not being too rigid with time management. Like getting done what you need to get done, but having the flexibility to ensure that your classroom still flows and that you have the time and the space to go back and cover things in depth and not just moving through because you're sticking to the schedule. So, yeah, thanks for listening.